Drummerly.com Unlimited Drama Series.
The text message still glowed on my phone screen like a neon sign advertising my own humiliation. LOL Dad's idea. Family prank. Find your own way home. 300 miles from home, standing in a gas station parking lot while freezing rain turned the asphalt into a skating rink, I watched my wife's family drive away with my car keys, my dignity, and apparently my marriage. My name is Tom Haywood, and I fix air conditioners for a living. I'm good with my hands, better with sarcasm, and until today I thought I was decent at reading people. Turns out I couldn't read the writing on the wall if it was painted in neon letters. The whole mess started 6 months ago when my wife Sasha announced we were going on a family bonding weekend at her parents' cabin. If hell is real, it's paved with forced fun and passive-aggressive in-laws who think blue-collar work is something you catch from sitting on dirty toilet seats. "It'll be great, Tommy," Sasha had said, using that fake sweet voice she'd been perfecting lately. "Dad's been planning this trip for weeks. He really wants to get to know you better." Arthur Madsen wanting to know me better was like a shark wanting to know a seal better. Technically true, but missing some crucial context about the food chain. Art was everything I wasn't. College-educated, country club member, the kind of guy who wore polo shirts unironically and called everyone sport or champ, depending on how much he wanted to condescend to them. His son Chris was Art 2.0, complete with social media addiction and the kind of confidence that only comes from never having to worry about making rent. Linda, Sasha's mom, played the sweet grandmother role perfectly, right up until she'd slip in comments about poor Tom's little job, or how nice it would be if Sasha could do better for herself. But the real wild card was Greg Turner, the family friend who'd somehow inserted himself into every family gathering over the past year. Real estate agent, drove a BMW that cost more than I made in 2 years, and had the kind of smile that made me want to check my wallet after shaking his hand. The warning signs had been there for months. Sasha spending more time on her phone, mysterious work calls that made her giggle, Instagram posts with Greg that seemed a little too friendly. When your wife starts liking every single post, from a guy who looks like he stepped out of a teeth-whitening commercial, it's time to pay attention. "You're being paranoid," she'd said when I brought it up. "Greg's just a friend. He helps Dad with investments." Right, and I'm just a guy who fixes air conditioners, not someone who notices when the temperature in his own house starts dropping. The morning of the trip, everyone was in high spirits except me. We loaded into 2 cars, me driving Sasha and Chris in my beat-up Honda, while Art, Linda, and Greg took Art's SUV. The plan was to caravan up to the cabin, about 4 hours north. 3 hours in, we stopped at a truck stop for gas and coffee. Standard road trip stuff. I went inside to grab drinks and snacks, maybe use the bathroom, stretch my legs. Normal human being activities. When I came out 5 minutes later, both cars were gone. At first, I thought maybe they'd driven around to the other side of the building. Then I thought maybe this was some kind of mistake. Then my phone buzzed with that text message, and I realized my in-laws had just pulled off the most expensive practical joke in family history. The group chat exploded with messages. Chris, "Bet he cries." Art, "Time for Tommy to man up. Character building." Linda, "Oh, you boys and your pranks." Greg, "This is hilarious. Wish I could see his face." And Sasha, my loving wife of 8 years, the woman who'd promised to stick with me through better or worse. "Don't be mad, baby. It's just a joke. Dad says it'll be good for you." Standing there in the rain, watching 18-wheelers splash through puddles the size of small lakes, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger exactly. More like the moment when you're working on a broken air conditioner and suddenly understand exactly what's wrong with it and exactly how to fix it. "You want to play games?" I said out loud, not caring if other customers thought I was talking to myself. "Let's play." I called Pete, my best friend and the only person I knew who'd think this situation was as screwed up as I did. "They did what?" Pete's voice crackled through my phone's speaker. "Left me at a truck stop 300 miles from home as a prank." Jesus, Tom. What kind of family does that? The kind that's about to learn why you don't mess with someone who knows how to make things very, very uncomfortable. Pete laughed. The kind of laugh that meant he was already thinking along the same lines I was. "What do you need?" "A ride to the nearest car rental place, and maybe some advice on creative problem solving." "Brother, you've come to the right place. An hour later, I was behind the wheel of a rented SUV, driving not toward home but toward the cabin, where my loving family was planning to enjoy their weekend at my expense. The storm was getting worse, but I'd driven in worse weather. Plus, I had something they didn't: motivation. The cabin was one of those rustic weekend places that rich people buy to feel connected to nature without actually giving up any real comforts. Art had been bragging about it for years: how it had a generator, satellite internet, a full kitchen, all the amenities you could want. What Art didn't know was that I'd been there before, back when Sasha and I were first married, and her parents still pretended to like me. I'd even done some electrical work on the place, fixed a few outlets, updated some wiring. Professional habit, I always notice how things work. More importantly, I'd made a copy of the spare key, just in case of emergencies. This definitely qualified as an emergency. I arrived at the cabin 2 hours before they did, thanks to my head start, and the fact that I wasn't stopping every 30 miles for Linda's bathroom breaks. The place looked exactly the same: log walls, big windows, the kind of rustic luxury that costs more per square foot than my entire house. I let myself in and got to work. First, I found the main electrical panel in the basement. The heating system ran on a combination of electric baseboard heaters and a propane furnace, both controlled by circuits I'd installed myself. I flipped the main breaker for the heating system and, for good measure, loosened it just enough that it wouldn't stay in the on position even if someone tried to flip it back. Next, I went to the kitchen and opened the valve under the sink that controlled the water pressure to the whole house. Not enough to shut it off completely, that would be too obvious, but enough to reduce it to a trickle. Cold water trickle. Then I gathered up every blanket, pillow, and warm piece of fabric I could find and loaded them into my rental car. The cabin had a storage shed about 50 yards away, hidden behind some trees. I moved all the blankets there, along with most of the non-perishable food from the pantry. Finally, I left a little calling card. In the electrical panel, tucked behind the breaker I'd loosened, I left a small piece of paper with a message: "Try flipping this one, genius. T." The whole operation took me about 90 minutes. By the time I was done, the cabin looked normal, comfortable even. But anyone trying to actually stay there was going to have a very different experience. I drove to a hotel about 20 miles away, a nice place with room service and heated indoor parking. I checked in, ordered a steak dinner, and settled in to watch the show. The first text came around 8 p.m. "Hey, babe, having some trouble with the heat at the cabin? Do you know anything about the electrical stuff here?" I waited an hour before responding. "Sorry, honey. Kinda busy finding my own way home. Like you suggested." Then I posted a selfie to Instagram. Me in a plush hotel robe, holding a glass of wine with the caption, "Sometimes getting abandoned leads to the best discoveries. Blessed Saarj unexpected vacation." The responses came fast and furious. Sasha: "Tom, this isn't funny anymore. It's freezing here." Art: "Now see here, sport. We've all had our fun, but joke's over." Linda: "Tommy dear, we're very cold. Could you please help us?" Even Chris chimed in. "Dude, seriously, we get it. You win. Can you just tell us how to fix the heat?" But my favorite was from Greg. "Hey man, no hard feelings about the prank, right? We're all friends here." Friends, right? I took another selfie, this one of my room service dinner, and posted it with the caption: "Nothing like a warm meal in a warm room. Hope everyone else is staying cozy tonight. Czechish gratitude, Czechirch warmth." The phone calls started around 10 p.m. First Sasha, then Art, then Linda. I let them all go to voicemail. Around midnight, Chris tried FaceTiming me. I answered just long enough for him to see me in my comfortable hotel room, then hung up. The next morning brought a whole new level of desperation. "Tom, please. We found the food in the shed, but we still can't get the heat working. Mom's getting sick. The water barely..." works and it's ice cold. This isn't funny anymore. I'm sorry, okay? We're all sorry. It was Dad's idea, but we all went along with it. Please just tell us what you did. I was enjoying my complimentary hotel breakfast when Art himself called. Listen here, Tommy, he said, dropping all pretense of friendliness. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it ends now. You tell me what you did to my cabin, or there's going to be consequences. Consequences, I said, taking a sip of fresh orange juice. Art, I'm 300 miles away, eating pancakes in a heated restaurant. What kind of consequences are you planning to impose from a freezing cabin with no hot water? Don't get smart with me, boy. Too late for that, sport. I've been smart this whole time. You're just now noticing. I hung up and posted another Instagram story. Day 2 of my unexpected solo vacation. Sometimes the best trips are the ones you never planned. Weather's been a little rough, but I'm staying nice and warm. Solo travel, hard blessed. The storm kept them trapped for 2 more days. 2 days of freezing temperatures, cold water, and the slowly dawning realization that maybe, just maybe, they'd messed with the wrong guy. I spent those 2 days enjoying room service, the hotel spa, and the increasingly frantic messages from my loving family. By the 3rd day, they'd found my note in the electrical panel, but the breaker was damaged enough that they couldn't fix it without tools they didn't have. You sabotaged the cabin, Sasha texted. This is crazy, Tom. This is not who you are. You're right, I texted back. The Tom you knew would have sat there and taken it, but that Tom got left at a truck stop in the middle of a storm. This Tom has learned some new tricks. When the storm finally broke, they managed to get the car started and limped home. I checked out of my hotel, drove back to town, and waited. The confrontation I was expecting came that evening. Sasha walked into our house looking like she'd spent 3 days in a refugee camp, which, in a way, she had. We need to talk, she said. Do we? Because last I checked, your family's communication style involved abandonment and humiliation. I'm not sure I speak that language. It was just a prank, Tom. Dad thought it would be funny. Funny? I nodded slowly. You know what I think is funny? Spending 3 days in a luxury hotel while you all learned what it's like to be left out in the cold. Literally. You could have killed us. Mom was hypothermic. But I didn't. See, that's the difference between us, Sasha. When you abandoned me, you didn't care what happened to me. When I returned the favor, I made sure you had food and shelter. You were uncomfortable, not dead. She stared at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Maybe she was. This isn't over, she said. You're right about that. What Sasha didn't know, what none of them knew yet, was that I'd spent my 3 days in the hotel doing more than just enjoying room service. I'd been thinking, planning, and most importantly, paying attention to some very interesting text messages. See, when you're married to someone for 8 years, you tend to know their phone habits. Sasha always left her phone charging on the kitchen counter when she showered, always used the same password, her birthday, always forgot to log out of her social media accounts on the shared iPad. The night she got back from the cabin, while she was in the shower washing off 3 days of cold misery, I took a look at what I'd been missing. What I found was worse than I'd expected. The affair with Greg had been going on for 6 months. Not just an emotional affair, a full-blown hotel room renting, explicit photo sharing, planning a future together affair. The messages went back to January, right around the time Sasha had started being distant, and Greg had started showing up to every family gathering. But the real kicker was a conversation from the week before our trip. Greg, I wish we could spend the weekend together without all the family drama. Sasha, what if we could? What if there was a way to get Tom out of the picture for the weekend? Greg, what do you mean? Sasha, Dad's been wanting to play one of his pranks on Tom forever. What if we encouraged him? Get Tom stranded somewhere, then we could have the whole weekend to ourselves. Greg, that's brilliant. Your dad would love it and we get our alone time. Sasha, I'll talk to Dad tomorrow. He's been dying to put Tom in his place. The prank wasn't just about humiliating me. It was about giving my wife and her lover a free weekend to plan my replacement. I screenshotted everything. Then I started making some calls. The first call was to Pete. Remember how you said you'd help with creative problem solving? What do you need? How do you feel about ruining some lives? Whose lives are we ruining? The people who tried to ruin mine. Pete was quiet for a moment. What did you find? I told him about the messages, the affair, the real reason behind the prank. When I finished, Pete whistled low. Brother, they really screwed themselves, didn't they? They did, but they don't know it yet. What's the plan? Ever hear the phrase nuclear option? I like where this is going. The next morning, Sasha left for work like nothing had happened. She kissed me goodbye, told me she loved me, and said she hoped we could put this whole silly weekend behind us. I waited until she was gone. Then I got to work. First, I printed out every single message between Sasha and Greg. Every text, every photo, every hotel receipt I could find in her email. I organized them chronologically in a nice folder, the kind I used for important work contracts. Then I made copies. Lots of copies. I drove to Greg's real estate office first. It was one of those fancy places with marble floors and agents who looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. Greg's headshot was right there in the window. Greg Turner, your dream home specialist. I walked in like I was looking to buy a house. I'd like to speak with Greg Turner, I told the receptionist.
A couple's spa. You took her to the place we go. It was a birthday gift. She's a friend. Friends don't get $500 couples massage.
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
Do you have an appointment? Tell him Tom Haywood is here. He'll want to see me. 5 minutes later, Greg appeared, all smiles and fake confidence. Tom, hey buddy, how are you doing after the weekend? No hard feelings about the prank, right? Actually, Greg, I wanted to thank you. His smile flickered. Thank me? For helping me understand what kind of people I'm dealing with. I pulled out the folder and handed him a copy of his text conversation with my wife. Especially this part where you two planned the whole thing so you could spend the weekend screwing in a hotel room. Greg's face went white. Tom, I can explain. No need. It's all explained right here, in your own words. I looked around the office, making sure my voice carried. I especially like the part where you call me a pathetic loser and talk about how much better you are in bed than me. Every conversation in the office stopped. Every agent, every client, every person within earshot was now staring at Greg Turner, dream home specialist and home wrecker. Tom, please, let's talk about this privately. Why? You didn't want privacy when you were planning to humiliate me. Why should I give you what you wouldn't give me? I left the folder on his desk and walked out. Behind me, I could hear his colleagues starting to whisper, starting to ask questions. My next stop was Sasha's office. Sasha worked in HR for a mid-sized company downtown. She was always talking about maintaining professional standards and appropriate workplace behavior. It seemed like the perfect place to discuss inappropriate behavior. I walked into the HR department like I belonged there. Is Sasha Haywood available? I'm her husband. Oh, Tom. She's in a meeting, but I can get her for you. Is everything okay? Actually, I was hoping to speak with her supervisor. It's about a personal matter that might affect her professional judgment. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a conference room with Sasha's boss, a no-nonsense woman named Margaret, who looked like she'd seen every kind of workplace drama imaginable. Mr. Haywood, what can I help you with? My wife is having an affair with a business associate, and I'm concerned it might be affecting her work performance. I slid another copy of the folder across the table, especially since they've been using company resources to coordinate their relationship. Margaret opened the folder and started reading. Her expression got more serious with each page. These messages show them planning to deceive you about a family trip. Among other things, I'm not trying to get Sasha fired, but I thought you should know that your HR representative has some judgment issues when it comes to honesty and integrity. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention, Mr. Haywood. I left the office knowing that Sasha's professional reputation was about to take a serious hit, but I wasn't done yet. My third stop was the country club where Art was a member, the same country club where he played golf with other retired executives and bragged about his successful family. I asked to speak with the membership director. I'm Tom Haywood, Arthur Madsen's son-in-law. I wanted to discuss a situation that reflects poorly on the club's reputation. 20 minutes later, I'd explained the whole situation to a very concerned membership director. I showed him the messages, explained how Art had orchestrated the prank, and mentioned that it had been discussed and planned at club events. We take the behavior of our members very seriously, Mr. Haywood. This kind of conduct doesn't align with our values. I understand. I just thought you should know what kind of person you're associating with your club's reputation. By the time I got home, word was starting to spread. In a town like ours, gossip travels faster than bad weather. My phone started ringing around 3 p.m. Tom, what the hell did you do? It was Art, and he sounded panicked. I told the truth, Art. You remember the truth, right? It's that thing you abandoned when you decided to humiliate me for fun. You can't just go around showing people private messages. Watch me. This is going too far, son. Don't call me son. Sons don't get abandoned at truck stops by their families. The next call was from Greg. Tom, please, you're ruining my career over a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Greg, you screwed my wife and helped plan my humiliation. The only thing I misunderstood was thinking you were a decent human being. I'll lose everything. Good. Maybe next time you'll think twice before trying to destroy someone else's everything. Sasha came home early that day. She walked through the front door, looking like someone had run over her dog. You bastard, she said. You absolute bastard. Hello to you too, sweetheart. How was work? They're investigating me for ethics violations. Margaret says I might be suspended pending a full review. That's terrible. Maybe you should have thought about ethics before you started planning my humiliation with your boyfriend. You went through my phone, your phone that you'd left unlocked on our shared counter, in our shared house, while you were washing off 3 days of consequences for your actions? Yeah, I looked. And what I found was very educational. You have no right. I have every right. You're my wife. Or at least you were until you decided Greg was a better option. She stared at me, and for a moment I thought she might actually apologize, might actually show some remorse for what she'd done. Instead, she said, I want a divorce. Funny thing about that, I said. So do I. I handed her a manila envelope. Divorce papers. I filed them this morning. You're being served. You can't be serious. Dead serious. And just so we're clear, I'm asking for the house, half of everything in our joint accounts, and alimony based on the difference in our incomes. You'll never get it. Maybe not. But I've got a folder full of evidence showing adultery, fraud, and conspiracy to commit emotional abuse. I like my chances. That's when she really lost it. You think you're so smart, she screamed. You think you've won something. But you're still just a pathetic air conditioner repairman who nobody respects. You're right, I said calmly. I am an air conditioner repairman. But I'm an air conditioner repairman who outplayed a bank executive, an HR manager, and a real estate agent. What does that say about you? She grabbed a lamp and threw it at the wall. I hate you. I know. The feeling's mutual. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. I poured myself a beer and sat down to wait for the next phase of the show. It didn't take long. Over the next week, the story spread through town like wildfire. Mrs. Ruzicka, our neighbor and the unofficial town gossip coordinator, made sure everyone knew about the family prank and its aftermath. Art got kicked out of the country club. Apparently, conduct unbecoming a gentleman was still grounds for membership revocation. Greg's real estate career imploded when his wife found out about the affair and decided to make it everyone else's business too. She posted screenshots of his messages with Sasha on every local Facebook group, along with photos of him leaving hotels with my wife. Sasha got suspended from work pending an investigation into whether she'd used company resources for personal business. Turns out she had. Company phone, company laptop, even company time spent coordinating with Greg. Chris lost his job when the TikTok video he made defending the prank went viral for all the wrong reasons. Apparently, family abandons man in storm as prank wasn't the kind of content that made people want to buy insurance from him. Linda became a social pariah at her church when word got out about what the family had done. Church ladies don't like bullies, especially bullies who pick on hardworking men. But the best part came 2 weeks later, when Pete called me with some very interesting information. Remember how you asked me to keep an eye on Greg? What did you find? He's been staying at the Riverside Motel since his wife threw him out. Room 237. Same room he and Sasha used for their little rendezvous. Interesting. Gets better. Sasha's been there too. Last night, actually. Looks like they're trying to make their relationship work, now that it's out in the open. How romantic. Want to know the really funny part? Tell me. The Riverside's air conditioning system has been acting up. Management's been looking for a reliable HVAC contractor to fix it. I smiled. Is that so? Thought you might find that interesting. The next morning, I called the Riverside Motel and spoke with the manager. I understand you're having air conditioning problems? Oh, thank God. Are you available today? We've got guests complaining about the heat, and it's supposed to hit 90 degrees. I can be there in an hour. I loaded my van with tools and headed to the motel. Room 237 was on the second floor, overlooking the parking lot. I could see Greg's BMW parked right outside. I knocked on the manager's office door. Tom Haywood, HVAC contractor. You called about air conditioning problems. Yes, it's been out since yesterday. The guests in 237 are particularly upset about it. Let me take a look at the system. The Riverside's air conditioning was controlled by a central unit on the roof, with individual thermostats in each room. It was an older system, the kind I'd worked on hundreds of times. I climbed up to the roof and opened the main unit. Everything looked normal, which was exactly what I'd expected. The problem wasn't mechanical, it was electrical. I found the control panel that managed the individual room units. Room 237's circuit was clearly marked. I flipped the breaker off. Then I went downstairs and knocked on the door of room 237. Greg answered, shirtless and sweating. What do you want? HVAC contractor. I'm here to fix your air conditioning. Tom? His face went white. What are you doing here? My job. I pushed past him into the room. Sasha was sitting on the bed in a hotel bathrobe, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else in the world. Hello, sweetheart. How's the love nest? Get out, she said. In a minute. I just need to check your thermostat. I walked over to the unit on the wall and pretended to examine it. Looks like you've got an electrical problem. Can you fix it? Greg asked. Oh, I can fix it. Question is, do I want to? Tom, please, Sasha said. Don't do this. Don't do what? My job? The job you always said wasn't good enough for you? I opened my toolbox and pulled out a screwdriver. See, the thing about air conditioning systems is that they're more complicated than people think. Lots of moving parts, lots of electrical connections. Easy to fix if you know what you're doing. Easy to break if you don't. What do you want? Greg asked. I want you to understand something. Both of you. I sat down in the room's single chair, making myself comfortable. You thought you were smarter than me. You thought you could humiliate me, destroy my marriage, ruin my life, and I'd just take it because I'm just a working-class guy who fixes air conditioners. Tom, Sasha started, but here's the thing you never understood. I might just fix air conditioners, but I'm good at it. Really good at it. And being good at fixing things means I'm also good at understanding how they work, including how people work. I stood up and walked to the thermostat. You see, when you understand systems, mechanical systems, electrical systems, social systems, you understand that everything is connected. You change one thing, it affects everything else. I pulled the thermostat off the wall, revealing the wires behind it. For instance, if I were to disconnect this wire here, I touched a red wire with my screwdriver, your air conditioning would never work properly again. Not until someone who really knew what they were doing came to fix it. You wouldn't, Greg said. Wouldn't I? You destroyed my marriage, my reputation, my relationship with my wife's family. What's a little discomfort compared to that? We'll call the manager, Sasha said. Go ahead. Tell him that the HVAC contractor he hired is sabotaging your room. Tell him why you think I might want to do that. I'm sure he'd love to hear about your affair and how it led to this situation. They both stared at me, finally understanding that they weren't in control anymore. Here's what's going to happen, I said, putting the thermostat back on the wall. I'm going to fix your air conditioning, because unlike you, I'm not the kind of person who leaves people to suffer in unbearable conditions. I flipped the breaker back on remotely using my phone, a new feature in my service app that let me control systems I'd worked on. Cool air immediately started flowing from the vents. But I want you to remember this moment, I continued. I want you to remember that I had the power to make you miserable, and I chose not to use it. That's the difference between us. When you had power over me, You used it to hurt me. When I have power over you, I'm choosing to be better than you. I packed up my tools and headed for the door. Tom, wait, Sasha said. I turned back. I'm sorry. I'm really, truly sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it. You're right, I said, and it doesn't fix anything. But it's a start. I walked out of the room and down to the manager's office. All fixed, I told him. Just a simple electrical problem. What do I owe you? Nothing. Consider it a public service. I drove home feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. I got the house, half our assets, and enough alimony to make up for the difference in our incomes. Sasha's lawyer tried to argue that her affair didn't matter, but the evidence of premeditated deception and emotional abuse carried a lot of weight with the judge. Art never spoke to me again, which I considered a bonus. Linda sent me a card apologizing for her part in the prank, but we both knew our relationship was over. Chris moved to another state, supposedly for a fresh start, but really because everyone in town knew him as the guy who'd helped abandon his brother-in-law in a storm. Greg's real estate career never recovered. His wife took him for everything in their divorce, and his reputation in town was shot. Last I heard, he was selling used cars in a city 2 hours away. Sasha and Greg tried to make their relationship work, but it turns out that relationships built on betrayal and deception don't have the strongest foundations. They broke up 6 months after my divorce was final. Pete and I still laugh about the whole thing over beers. You know what the best part is? He said one night. They thought they were teaching you a lesson about toughness. Turns out you were tougher than all of them combined. Not tougher, I said, smarter. Same thing in